Hello children, welcome back to another recapitulation video of mine. Today we are going to revisit all the important concepts related to the chapter power sharing. So shall we begin? Now children, what do you mean by the word power sharing? When two people or members of an organization or members of a political party join hands together and decide to do the work together to achieve a common goal. We call it power sharing. Well, I'm going to introduce this lesson by taking two examples. One that of Belgium and the other one that is Sri Lanka. Now, Belgium. We have learned this in nationalism in Europe. According to the Treaty of Vienna, 1815, Belgium came under the controls of Netherlands, and through the July Revolution, Belgium got its freedom from Netherlands. So from this we can understand that Belgium is a country of mixed culture. There were 59% of the population that spoke Dutch, 40% that spoke French, and remaining 1% that spoke German. In the capital of Belgium, that is Brussels, 80% of the people spoke French, while the remaining 20% spoke Dutch. The minority French community was much richer and powerful than that of the majority community that was Dutch speaking. So how did the people of Belgium solve this ethnic problem? Let's see. Well, children, in order to solve this ethnic problem, Belgium decided to have an accommodative approach. The number of ministers, that is Dutch-speaking and French-speaking, was equal in the central government. Brussels, which was the capital of Belgium, had a separate government in which both communities had equal representation. Number 3. The state government was not subordinate to the central government. Number 4. In case any special law had to be passed, the support of the majority from members of all linguistic groups was necessary. Number 5. There was another form of government that was also set up, that is called a community government. This government dealt with culture, education, and language-related issues.
Now let's look at Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is a small island situated south of India. And as we all know, we had a close relationship with Sri Lanka from the ancient time. For example, the story of Ramayana or the story of those indigenous workers who went from India to work in the farms of Sri Lanka and later on became a part of that country. So what exactly was the problems faced in Sri Lanka? Sri Lanka, like Belgium, also had a mixed culture. The population consists of Sinhala speaking people, Tamil speaking people, natives of Sri Lanka, which was called the Sri Lankan Tamils, and also the Tamil Lankans, who were the descendants of plantation workers who came from India during the colonial period. So, out of the total population, 74% was Sinhalese, 18% was Tamil speaking people who spoke Tamil, 13% were the natives of Sri Lankans, and the remaining were Tamil Sri Lankans who came from India. So, when Sri Lanka got its freedom in 1948, they decided to form a constitution. For this, an act was passed which is called the Act of 1956. Now let's look into the Sri Lankan Act of 1956. The Sri Lankan government decided to have a majoritarian approach. What do you mean by this majoritarian approach? Here, the majority community will rule the country, make laws for everyone, and totally disregard the wishes and the need of the minority. Children, as you all know, 74% of the population were Sinhalese. So according to this law. The Singhali government or the Singhali people will rule Sri Lanka, will make laws for the country, ignoring the wishes of the other minority sector. So, what exactly did this act speak? So, according to this act, Singhali will be the official language of the country and Tamil will be totally ignored. Preference will be given to Singhali people in all government jobs and educational institutions. Since Sinhalese followed Buddhism, Buddhism is considered to be the main religion and other religions such as Hinduism, Islam and Christianity was ignored. So when this act came into picture, the minority felt alienated. No respect or recognition was given to their language, culture and religion. They began a struggle for equalities in job, entry to the university, and recognition for their language and culture. Slowly, children, the conflict changed into a demand for regional autonomy. The Tamilians were grouped together in the north and east of Sri Lanka. Their demands were ignored by the government, and the conflict became so severe that by 1980 they wanted an independent state of their own. They wanted Tamil Eelam in the north and east. This led to a civil war, which killed thousands of people on both sides. The flourishing economy of Sri Lanka had disappeared, and the conflict had given a blow to social, culture, and economic life of Sri Lanka. So, from this, what do you understand, children? Let's take these two examples, Belgium and Sri Lanka. Belgium and Sri Lanka had ethnic problems, but Belgium adopted an accommodative attitude, whereas Sri Lanka adopted a majoritarian attitude. Because Belgium adopted an accommodative attitude where they brought in all the sectors of the society together, they were able to succeed and their country started flourishing. Whereas Sri Lanka adopted a majoritarian attitude where they gave importance only to Sri Lanka, Sinhalese people, and this automatically led to a disaster, led to civil wars, and a failure in the economic growth of the country. So, for a country to flourish, the government should be able to take all sectors of the community together. Only then the country will be able to flourish. Now, children, this is where power sharing comes into picture, or why power sharing is very desirable. Power sharing is a must in democracy. There are two reasons which makes power sharing desirable: prudent and moral. Now let's look into the prudent reason. Number one, it reduces the possibility of conflict between different social groups. Social conflict leads to violence and political instability that we have seen in case of Sri Lanka. It also prevents the majoritarian group from overstepping their rights to enhance their own power. Power sharing unites the nation under one roof. When power is not shared, children, it oppresses the minority and even the majority is ruined. Now let's look into the moral aspect. The spirit of democracy calls for power sharing. People who are affected by policies must have a hand in shaping those policies. Citizen participation is a must in power sharing. Moral reasons make power sharing essential and valuable. Because of these reasons, power sharing is very important in democracy. Now let's look into different forms of power sharing. First, Let's look how the power is shared at different organs of the government, such as the legislative, the executive, and judiciary. Children, you would have already known what is legislative, what is executive, and judiciary. But still, I'll tell you. Legislative is where the laws are made. Executives are those set of people who implements the law in practice, and judiciary is our watchdog. This type of power sharing is called horizontal distribution of power because it allows the different organs of the government placed at the same level to exercise different powers. The next one is power shared at different level. That is the power shared between the central government and the state government, or in India it is between the central, state and the local self-government or the local self-body. This type of power sharing is called federal form of power sharing. Now we come to another form of power sharing where the power is shared between different social groups such as the religious or linguistic group. A very good example of this type of power sharing is the community government in Belgium. This method is used to give the minority community a fair share in power. Now we come to the last form of power sharing, that is power shared between different political parties, pressure groups and movements control or influence those powers. Now what do you mean by a pressure group? Now let's take the live example which is happening in India. The farmers' protest which is happening in Punjab in the northern part of India. These are a group of people who have joined together for a common cause. They have certain demands. They are protesting against the farm bill and they want the government to listen to them and to fulfill their demand. Such groups are called pressure groups or pressure movements. These people are there till their demands are fulfilled and they also help in formulating the policies made by the government. The next one is the power share agreement between different political parties. The typical example is the coalition parties which are found in India, for example in Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, etc. So what is coalition government? When two or more parties form an alliance to contest election and if they get elected, they form a coalition government and thus sharing the powers. So these are the different forms of power sharing found in democracy. Number one, power shared between different organs of the government. Number two, power shared between the different levels of the government. Three, power shared between the social group. And number four, power share agreement between different political parties or between different pressure groups. Well, children, I hope you have understood the chapter power sharing. I hope all the concepts are very clear to you. Thank you for listening to this video.